Yes, welcome everyone. Just in the conversation before around forest garden and climate change and so on, the name Thich Nhat Hanh was mentioned. And yeah, I just would like to invoke our connection with him, and I guess most of you have been touched by his presence and by his work. I've met him a few times. Nalanda Monastery is not so far away from Plum Village. So I have definitely, since the beginning I explored meditation, I've followed his work and read his books. And one of the things that Thich Nhat Hanh is talking about in pointing to is the importance of Sangha. And maybe we can bring that just into the beginning of our meeting. You know, that's the sense of Sangha, the sense of coming together as a group with the same kind of questions. And yeah, supporting each other just through our presence in that exploration of questions, of deep questions, how to live, how to respond to what is happening around us and in us. You know, like really deep questions we all carry in our heart. What's the meaning of all of this? And yeah, so our Sangha here is quite small, but right now there's you know, all kinds of groups coming together with the same questions, and we are connected with all of them. As you know, or as many of you know, Thich Nhat Hanh passed away a few weeks ago. So there's a lot of people all over the world who are connected with him and who are right now practicing together with us. So we can invoke his smile and his kindness, his gentleness. Inviting him into our temple. I just see that Anne is here. Are you in Sweden or in Africa? It looks so...
I'm in Africa.
Okay. Yeah.
I'm sitting in a tree house on the topic of tree.
Okay. Yeah. I thought the trees out there, they don't look Swedish. Yeah. What was it again? Which country you are?
Zimbabwe.
Zimbabwe. Okay. Yeah. That's great. Yeah. Welcome.
Thank you.
Yeah, today's topic is first 20, and it is around something, in my experience, many people are interested in, and that's our relationship to anger. So it's about anger. And in our exploration of this energy, the energy of anger, we will adapt a bit Ken McLeod's take on it. In his commentary, where he adopts the tantric view on anger. So although in the first itself. Tokme Zongpo talks about the enemy anger and subduing anger. And we are going to take a different view on anger. So in the tantric approach to anger, as to other afflictions as well, we adapt a view to see anger as a potential ally, not as an enemy. So we adapt a view, an exploration, how what's the wisdom aspect of anger. So according to the tantric view, each of the so-called affliction has a wisdom aspect. And the wisdom aspect of anger is clarity. So what we are going to explore today is what kind of practices can McLeod suggest to transform the energy of anger into something constructive, into an ally. And part of that transformation is that in meditation we develop a capacity of stepping out of the identification with the content of our experience and experiencing or looking at our experience, looking at our experience with kindness, but also with wisdom. So here meaning wisdom, seeing that the experience we have right now is much more ephemeral, much more vibrant, much more alive. It's changing, its energy, than it seems to appear in the first moment. And that's something we can do right now with whatever is there. So maybe anger is not in the foreground, but maybe you feel sad, you feel happy, you are tired, you are anxious. So whatever is in your experience. So in our meditation now, I would like to guide us a bit into this backward step, into what you could call a kind of a loving witness, and then looking into what is happening now and starting to see how it's all changing, it's all moving. There's nothing solid there. There's nothing in my experience which I can really put my finger on. It appears, but it is ephemeral. And it is changing and it will pass away. So that's the invitation for the first meditation, and I will give some guidance. So first, you adjust your posture, taking your seat. With that balance of gentleness on one hand, but also a certain dignity. And if you like, you can close your eyes. And just noticing what you bring with you And allowing this shift to happen from the head into the body, from being entangled, caught by the content, by the thoughts, by the stories. So a gentle sliding into the felt sense of your body. Shifting from doing to being here in present moment awareness. And in our daily consciousness, we often have this sense that there is this I, this me in the head, maybe behind the eyes or something. And now we have the opportunity to relax that and really slide into the body and relaxing the central position from where we usually look from. And our breath can help us in this shift. So with the in-breath sliding, dropping into the body, and in that dropping into the body, we unhook from thoughts. And then with the out-breath, there could be a possibility of some release, of some softening in your shoulders and in your belly. Welcoming as best as you can the guests in the guest house of the body. And also staying connected with the surroundings you're in, with the sounds around you. Remembering that we are breathing together. And returning and resting. So returning means to slide back into the felt sense of your body. Maybe there's something in the foreground, something pleasant or unpleasant. And resting means then to do nothing with it, just noticing. So just noticing and resting. And in this resting, just being present, there's a sense that you're receiving what is happening. So attention or awareness doesn't go out, but actually you're just resting and you're receiving. You're receiving the sensations in your body, you're receiving this voice, you're receiving the thoughts. You're receiving sensations and thoughts and feelings, just like the sky receives clouds and birds and planes. So awareness or attention is completely effortless. It's not something you do. You don't need to do anything. You're just receiving the next breath, the next sensation, the next thought. Just like the sky. Unhook from thinking. So you get more and more the sense that you're not, that you're not aware of the breath from above, like from sitting in your head and looking down, but you're receiving the breath where it is. So you receive the sensations just where they are. There's no distance. The receiving and the arising happens in the same place. And since there's nothing, absolutely nothing to do for you here, so neither adding nor taking away, nor controlling, nor manipulating, there's more and more relaxation happening. present moment awareness. Past is recognized as only existing in thoughts. Future is recognized as only existing in thoughts. And there is an effortless witnessing of what is here. And only when you get caught, you just notice that, and without any effort, you find yourself in the present moment again. So now you just look at your experience, witnessing your experience, receiving your experience. And here it doesn't matter if it's pleasant or unpleasant or neutral. Just notice that the content of your experience is moving, changing, flowing. And it is ephemeral. It's dreamlike or like a rainbow. So there's appearances, and some of them are vivid, like a rainbow. But you can't touch them, you can't hold them. There is something there, but but it's not solid. Or another word, it is empty. It has no substance. And just check if this is something you can confirm or recognize. And so you allow whatever wants to be received. Allow that to arise in the felt sense of your body. Then notice the ephemeral, transparent, empty nature. And if there's an experience of solidness, for example, the sense of sitting in a chair and the surface beneath you do the same there. You look at it, at the experience, and you recognize it as an appearance in consciousness with an awareness. So even the experience of solidness is ephemeral. There's nothing there you can really touch. Solidness is just a concept. Returning and resting, or receiving whatever is happening, just like the sky receives clouds. It's effortless. And so, and then you take your time to open your eyes, sliding out and including the visual into your meditative awareness. And maybe it's possible to not right now to collapse into that sense of the little me, of the little I behind your eyes, like the central position, but to stay in that sense that everything is being received, maybe like kind of with your whole body. So let's look at the text, verse 20. So Tokme Zongpo writes, if you don't subdue the enemy inside, your own anger, the more enemies you subdue outside, the more that come. Master the forces of loving kindness and compassion and subdue your own mind. This is the practice of a bodhisattva. So first, the words subdue an enemy in the first line, they are not very constructive for us. Yeah? So as I said, from a tantric point of view, anger is not an enemy, but a potential ally. And also subdue. It would be interesting to know exactly what the Tibetan word for that is. Subdue, I think, sounds a bit like suppressing or starting a war with anger. So it's kind of a warlike language. So I don't think that is very helpful for us. So instead of subdue, I think or at least that's the view Ken MacLeod takes here, is to use rather a word like transformation, to transform. to transform the potential enemy, anger, into a potential ally. The more enemies you subdue outside, the more that come. So that is an expression of that experience, that insight, that when we respond with violence to what is happening apparently outside of us, this will just increase the violence. So when we attack, that will increase the violence in the world. So here we are looking for another response. Master the forces of loving kindness and compassion. It's also a bit tough, that language, master the forces of loving kindness and compassion. And subdue your own mind. This is the practice of a bodhisattva. So Ken MacLeod suggests 3 different possible approaches to transform anger. And that is dissolving, employing, transforming. Dissolving, employing, transforming. So the first practice, which he calls dissolving, and this is actually very much connected, or we can make a connection here with the teachings of Thich Nhat Hanh, who also, he wrote a book about anger, and it's a big part of his teachings. So dissolving here describes a practice of finding a middle way between suppressing the anger and acting the anger out, and responding to the energy with kindness, with compassion. And Thich Nhat Hanh here uses the metaphor of holding a child, a distressed child. So it is a practice of recognizing the energy of anger, the energy of irritation, slowing down in that moment, pausing, neither suppressing nor expressing, giving the energy of anger an internal space, a mindful space, breathing with that, and starting to make that embrace like you would hold a child. So what happens in that, you could call it mindful anger. What happens there is you might become aware that behind the anger, there's another experience, another feeling, a feeling of helplessness, a feeling of grief, a feeling of vulnerability, a feeling of confusion. And then you start to address that part in you, that vulnerable part, that confused part, that helpless part, which is often a young part. So you start to see that the energy of anger, or that angry part in you, is actually a protector. It wants to protect your internal space from the experience of vulnerability, from the experience of grief, from the experience of helplessness. So it's actually not a bad guy. And you start to see the connection with your psychological history. So you start to see that pattern, that this protector, which then is called anger and sometimes is seen as an enemy, something we need to suppress, something we are angry about. So we are angry about the anger, that actually that the reason why this pattern developed in our life is to protect. So all of that becomes part of our capacity to have really a felt sense of loving kindness to that angry part, and then also to that part which this angry part wants to protect. This is, I mean, it's easy to talk about it, but as we all know, it's so difficult because the force of anger and our unwillingness to be with our deep pain, our deep vulnerability is so strong. So this is an example of a practice where we will fail again and again. And initially we might be able to explore this practice only after an outburst, going back to that moment and then asking ourselves, so, how did it feel, that energy of anger? And then exploring, what is it, what was it, what was there behind? What's the hurt part here? What's the vulnerable part? And then being a loving witness to that part, to that vulnerable part. Touching back to this little discussion we had before the session started about climate change, and I mean, climate change might not be the right word. It's more a collapse which is happening already. I mean, change happen. Change sounds like, so yeah, it's like something. Yeah. So. And it's easy to fall into anger and have enemies and hate others. And so I think also connected with that, what we talked about before the session, what is an important part of or whatever we do then also in the outside. So we were talking about forest gardening. So that kind of internal work to learn to take care of that rage and then particularly to go deeper into the helplessness, into the vulnerability, into the grief. And to take care of that with loving kindness. What I've pointed to in our in our meditation, so that is so important to deepen our capacity to be with our experience as a loving witness without getting caught into it, but also without distancing ourselves from it. So to develop a quiet confidence that I am able to feel all my feelings without suppressing them and without being overwhelmed by them. Where does this loving witness come from? Basically, it is an innate capacity of our Buddha nature, of the nature of our mind. So it is not something we need to discover, but not something we need to develop, but rather something we can discover. But in that journey of discovering the innate loving witness, the inborn, indestructible loving witness, we might use temporary aids like borrowing the eyes and hands of Thich Nhat Hanh or the Dalai Lama, or loving kindness practices. So there's some practices which help us to uncover the innate capacity of the loving witness. That's why being inspired by realized masters like Thich Nhat Hanh can be such a support. Because on the conditioned level, on the relative level, on the level of patterns and experience you have had in your life, it might be difficult for you to find the felt sense of loving kindness there if you have not experienced it so much. So that's the practice of dissolving. Dissolving through lovingly witnessing, through loving awareness, through kind presence. The second approach Ken McLeod suggests is employing. And that refers to the practice of Tonglen. So in this approach, we are seeing anger, a moment of anger, as an opportunity to cultivate compassion with the anger and the violence in other people. So in a moment of anger, we remember, I'm not the only one. There's many people who feel the same kind of frustration, the same kind of anger, the same kind of outrage. And we recognize the pain in that. And we take in the pain of the anger of other people. With the in-breath. And with the out-breath, we breathe out relief. We breathe out what is needed. So it's a practice of relaxing this notion of me and my anger and what happened to me and so on to kind of broaden our heart, broaden our awareness into the anger and the pain of which the pain anger creates in the inner life of people and around them. We have recognized that anger, violence comes from pain, from hurt. So our own anger becomes a stepping stone towards feeling connected with other people, and then with the out-breath, sharing what is really needed. So the third practice Ken MacLeod suggests is transformation. And in a way, this is the most, I don't know if I could say advanced, or maybe profound would be a better word. The most profound practice. It's easy to say or to describe this practice, but it takes time to be able to do this. And that is, in a moment of anger, neither suppressing nor acting out. So we already heard that, like the middle way between suppressing and acting out. But then the practice is self-inquiry in the sense of asking the question, what is aware of that anger? So you are using, and of course that practice can be done with any kind of contraction, also with desire. And actually we talked about that in our last meeting, where it was about the transformation of desire. So it's the same process here. So we're using a moment of contraction, and here the contraction of anger, kind of as a mindfulness bell, as an invitation to shift into the curiosity of what is aware of that. So in order to benefit or in order for that question to become a real shift in you, there needs to be, of course, a bit of more exploration in, so meditation on the nature of mind, kind of Mahamudra style meditation, so that when you ask the question, what is aware of this anger, that it is obvious for you that you're not asking a question which is to be answered on a philosophical or psychological level. It's a very particular way of looking. So it's a bit like if you use the image of the clouds and the sky. So there is the thunder clouds, and you are really identified with it, and you are in it, and it distorts the view you have of reality, and you're looking from it. So you're looking from the anger, and anger distorts reality. But you believe that the distortion of reality, which you perceive, is what is. So, and in this third method, you, through the question, what is aware, you make this shift of identification from the thunder clouds, from these dark clouds, into the sky. And then the cloud just does what clouds do. They stay a while and then they evaporate. And in that dissolution of the clouds, the clarity aspect, the wisdom aspect, which is in the cloud, becomes available. So there's a clarity available in the sense that you are able to see that boundaries have been crossed, that a feedback needs to be done, even maybe in a firm way. So your action after that practice can be quite firm. And that kind of manifestation of wrath, which is not coming from anger, which is not coming from hatred, which is not coming from the wish to harm, in the Tibetan iconography is depicted as these wrathful deities. So the wrathful deities with swords and black and fire around, they are an iconographic symbol of that kind of firm actions, wrathful action, which is not an expression of confusion, but is an expression of love, is an expression of compassion. So this is, of course, an ideal, yeah, but maybe a compass. Where in your life does it already happen that you, for example, in your relation, those of you who have children, I imagine that many of you who are mothers or fathers who know that kind of firm action, which from the outside seems to be wrathful, with a loud voice or with some firm gesture. But while you're doing that, you don't lose the connection with your heart. So another teacher calls that, and I talked about that a few sessions back, he calls that heart anger. So the possibility to, on the outside, have a behavior which maybe would be called anger, but from the inside, you are not losing the connection with your heart. And there's a clarity in that and a confidence that this is a constructive way, it's a loving way. So you notice that particular, that if you act out of anger, and of course that also happens to every mother and father, unless you are a Buddha father or Buddha mother. So, because you will be triggered. So there will be always an expression of anger which are inappropriate, which are hurting, because they come from a vulnerable part of you. They come from a young part of you. They come from a part of you which is overwhelmed. But what happens then after an action like that, you feel regret. Once the storm is over, you feel, yeah, something had to be said, but the way I did, and then you apologize. From a Buddhist teaching point of view, you would say you have created karma. It's not, there is something unresolved. There is something if you could go back, you would fix it. You would maybe say the same thing, but in a different way. Whereas when you stay connected with your heart in that situation, and you are clear and firm, then after, and it comes from that clarity which I talked about, then after you know, something in you knows, this is it. No, it's like round. You don't feel so, no karma was created. There's nothing to purify, there's nothing to forgive. It might take a few lifetimes to get there, but yeah, so we can be inspired by it and fail in our attempts. Yeah. So is there any question, comments on this first?
Yep.
Yes.
Yes, Stephan, I just want a clarification. I do understand the dissolving part. And when we speak about loving kindness, we are talking about loving kindness to oneself, not loving kindness to the person we are being angry about. Which is, is that what we mean?
In a way, I talked about both. So in the practice of Tonglen, the emphasis was more seeing the pain in the angry person and developing loving kindness to that vulnerable part in the angry person. But the emphasis in what I talked about today was more in developing loving kindness to the different parts in us.
Right, I was more focused on the dissolving part of the first one. I understand the Tonglen part, but on the dissolving part.
Yes.
when we speak about loving kindness at the dissolving level, it's more focused to oneself.
Yes, right. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you.
That's also the emphasis in the verse from Tokme Zongpo is the inner work. Yeah, so that's what this verse talks about the inner work. Not starting with the so-called enemy outside, but to go inside and work there. And this is also connected with the Buddhist view that the outer world is a reflection of our inner world. The violence outside is a reflection of the violence inside. Yeah. Is there something else you would like to add or? Yeah, Kate.
Thank you, Stephan, for that teaching. I was going to ask you where you feel anger fits in, not with people that you're intimately connected with or meet in your life, but in something like social injustice, where anger can surely be a great galvanizer, not only for yourself, but for other people who are perhaps existing in a state of apathy or ignorance. Can it be a very positive force sometimes?
Yeah. What do you think?
I think it can be. We started off talking about climate problems and climate justice. Okay, so let's just take that as an example.
Yeah.
I think unless you are absolutely affected, like your house is underwater or your house is on fire or whatever, it's very easy for individuals to kind of zone out about that. And this is certainly what I often witness, where people feel, oh, I sort out my glass from my plastic in the recycling bin, so I'm doing my part, or it's so complicated, the world's busted, there's nothing I can do anyway, so I'm just going to watch Netflix and eat toffee, whereas my personal view would be that maybe not all, but quite a lot of climate problems are actually caused by individuals, and whether they're individuals that are in charge of corporations or they're individuals who are in a place of political power. I think we're seeing this in almost every country in the world at the moment. How do you change that without people getting angry? What otherwise things aren't really going to change, are they? They're really not.
Yeah. I don't know really. I mean, I have, of course, reflection around that. And I wonder if it's possible to imagine a kind of outcry which doesn't come together with hatred. Because I can't see how anger, which comes from reactivity and which comes from making an enemy, how that can bring constructive change. I'm not sure. I know some people feel without anger that anger can be a catalysator, but how about compassion being a catalysator? I mean, would it be possible to I don't believe that you can change anything. I mean, that you can change behavior in people by attacking them. It feels more that by attacking people or criticizing them, they solidify their point of view. You meet resistance. So even if there's, like, you know, talking about with someone and trying to convince someone not to eat meat, for example, I feel that when we approach something with anger, then we solidify the position in the other person, even if there would be some openness or some curiosity. Yeah, so, but yeah, you want to say something?
I'm not sure that there's not room for both, although I'm happy to be corrected on this. I work a lot with school children, adults and school children, and if you want people to care about the environment, the very best thing that you can do is to teach them to love it,
Yes.
which is what you're saying. You know,
yes, that's what I'm saying.
And then it matters, instead of being just a blur of green out there somewhere. You know, they develop an intimate relationship with it. However, I also do think that there is a place for some direct action, and maybe we need to clarify about being angry. I'm not talking about going and stabbing the CEO of Shell, for example, because of whatever. However, I think it's very valid that a lot of organizations have completely divested from fossil fuels and are no longer like paying into pension funds and things which have fossil fuel. And that is, it's not a personalized attack, but it is an absolute clear statement of this is not acceptable. So maybe that type of thing is a wise action which comes out of anger. I'm certainly not suggesting that we go around, you know, bombing things or whatever. And I agree, but I hope it's not too trite to say once you start hitting people's pocketbooks, you know, they often are a bit more prepared to listen. You know, if you know, if you start to affect company profits or whatever, it is a very clear signal, and that has happened a great deal, I know, and many, for example, many academic organizations, universities and so forth, have been forced to withdraw from investing in, or having their money invested in fossil fuel companies because of the anger of students and academic staff for that. So they actually have been forced to do it. I take your point as well that often does result in a doubling down by the people in power in terms of big corporations and so forth, and we're also seeing that. But I think that's part of a greater divergence and bifurcation that we're seeing at the moment. We're seeing a lot of people that are turning towards a much more compassionate and sharing, fairer world, but there is the balancing of people in power are trying very, very hard to hang on to that. So yeah, I guess that's what I think. I think there's a place for wise action that comes from anger. I'm not sure what the Buddhist perspective exactly is on that, but it doesn't seem quite correct to just say, well, I'm going to dissipate my anger about the injustice of children mining for 8-year-old children mining for minerals, and wrecking the planet, or there's many examples.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so one point I try to make is that dissolving the anger here doesn't mean to let go of the energy and the wisdom in it, but to let go of the hatred in it. So that would be a forceful action, standing up to protect, to set boundaries, to say no, without that hatred, without the want to, without hatred. That's the best way I can say it. So a lot of what you said for me sounded, maybe we need some different kinds of words also, like anger, maybe opposed to healthy aggression or something. And I think that's what I also see in some of the movements, that something has changed. I'm not sure, because I'm not a political activist, but it seems that also there is that outrage. There seems to be less hatred there. I mean, and that's that I find inspiring. Yeah, one should avoid political topics in Buddhist teachings.
Why would that be?
I don't know. Maybe it happens too little. That could be also the case. Yeah, Pat.
Yeah. I just wanted to point out, Jennifer has put a link in the chat to Dalai Lama's book about anger for social issues. So that a resource.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Personally, I'm inspired to hold up the torch of nonviolence, no matter what. So it's just like, and I can't. I mean, I can really hear what Kate says, but it's just my heroes were like, Gandhi or Nelson Mandela. So that's something and it doesn't make sense sometimes. And I can maybe not rationally defend that. But it's just something. Yeah, non-violence, harmlessness. Has been always something so important to me, and that's also for me what I wish to be able to stay with non-violence and harmlessness, even in that collapse which is coming, when the resources get more scarce. That's my wish for myself and my intention, to stay decent and generous, and not hating people, not even hating the people who do the bad stuff. Yeah, but to see that, to have compassion even with them. Okay, so let's take a moment to be here again together. So just notice what is happening for you right now. Breathing together in our Sangha here, protected by the teachings of the Buddha, inspired by His Holiness the Dalai Lama. And one factor which brings us together here is that we ask similar questions. Yeah. And daring to ask these questions, which also came up today here. So having the same kind of struggles and trying to find a way to live and to respond to the situation in the world, and being together in that. And then we can extend to our awareness to all these people who ask the same kind of questions. And these questions, they come from such good place in us. It comes from our goodness and our care. Yeah, and then with our out breaths, let's share what is needed into this group, and then into the extended Sangha, and then even beyond. Well, let's share wisdom, compassion. May all beings be happy. And may people everywhere look after each other, also the animals. May people everywhere look after each other. And maybe then you want to include some particular people, inviting them into the loving, healing space. Okay, thank you very much. And have a nice day. And
Thank you,
I
Stephan.
see you tomorrow.
Thank you, Stephan.
Thank you. Thank you,
Stephan.
Stephan. Thank you, everybody.
so much,
Thank you,
Stephan.
Pat.
Bye.
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 Bye-bye.
Bye.
Good night.